Through most of the 50s, people were given a plethora of science fiction-based horror films. The Thing from Another World, The Blob, I Married a Monster from Outer Space, to name but a few. Most being the stuff of drive-in theatre or gimmick-driven cinema utilising early 3D, or maybe even William Castle buzzing the audience's butts while watching The Tingler. But then in the late 50s, future science started losing its appeal, and historic legend replaced it in the form of tight, corset-driven Gothic offerings from Hammer Studios. Starting with two classics of Gothic horror, Frankenstein and then a year later, Dracula, both starring Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, two fantastic actors without whom the Hammer films would have undoubtedly struggled to remain as popular as they did. Seeing the popularity of Hammer's horror movies, they were quickly joined by Amicus Studios. Though Amicus gave their films a more contemporary setting, there was no denying that they were copying Hammer in style and feel. In fact, many people mistake Amicus movies for Hammer films, and it didn't help the fact that Amicus employed the united talents of Cushing and Lee. The most famous Amicus productions were their anthology films, like 67's Torture Garden and 73's Vault of Horror. Audiences also got the occasional offering from other studios wanted to ride the wave of horror popularity. One such company was British Lion, who gave us I, Monster and the now classic Wicker Man, once again starring Christopher Lee. By the start of the 70s, audiences were beginning to grow tired of buxom ladies covered in fake blood. Horror through the years had evolved, and indeed was still evolving. 68 brought both The Night of the Living Dead and Rosemary's Baby, two classics of the genre. But nothing could prepare people for what was about to come. In 73, Warner Brothers gave us the William Friedkin directed movie, The Exorcist. Based on the book of the same name by William Peter Blatty, this was the movie that was about to slap horror cinema and indeed the audience around the face. Starring Linda Blair as the possessed little girl Regan, Max von Sydow as the veteran priest Lancaster Merrin, and Jason Miller as Father Damien Karras. The movie centres upon 12-year-old Regan, who through the course of the film becomes increasingly violent and offensive due to demonic possession. Something everyone shuns through the first half, believing her to be psychologically troubled rather than possessed. After a few visits from Karras, he steadily becomes convinced that she is truly possessed and calls in Merrin, the exorcist of the title. The movie shocked audiences from country to country. The image of Regan cursing and thrusting a crucifix between her legs proved too much for many to stomach, and the use of subliminal effects caused controversy world over. This was the movie that gave the horror genre a much-needed shot in the arm, and it went on to become the second biggest film of the year, behind Paul Newman's The Sting. Adjusted for inflation, it is the highest-earning horror film of all time, reaching a staggering $1.7 billion. And the image of Father Merrin arriving at the house is now a firm part of pop culture. Then, just as audiences were daring to enter a darkened cinema again, 74 gave them the most brutal independent film to that time. Tobe Hooper's seminal movie, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. A movie that to this day is unique in its sheer, unrelenting terror. It kicks off with brother and sister, Sally and Franklin Hardesty, travelling with some friends to visit their grandfather's grave. Afterwards, they decide to travel to the old family home, and once there, they split up, and two of the friends stumble upon a nearby farmhouse. This is when the carnage begins. From the moment the terror starts, it just builds up layer upon layer, and never lets up until the final credits roll, leaving the audience feeling both exhausted and petrified. But while the audience comes away feeling they have seen the most blood-curdling movie ever, there is in fact very little on-screen bloodshed. You just believe that you have seen more than you have. There's nothing like the power of your own mind to truly get beneath your skin. Made for a paltry $140,000, it made over $30 million at the domestic box office. One of the things that made the film so unique, and indeed still does to this day, is that the main evil of the film, Leatherface, gets away scot-free. The lone survivor of the hunted group, Sally, barely escapes and will surely be traumatised for life, while Leatherface is merely annoyed that she got away. The last image of the film, in fact, is of Leatherface throwing a tantrum, waving his chainsaw around. After these two movies, it became clear that audiences needed more than long capes, low bodices, and shock reveals to scare them. They needed true terror, something cinema would go on to give them in abundance. Both films inevitably fell foul of the BBFC here in the UK. The Exorcist being banned from home video for 11 years, and after an initial year-long release at the cinema, Chainsaw was then banned for the next 24 years. Chainsaw was even listed as a video nasty throughout the 80s. Both films, though, are now revered as classics, which is testament to their importance both to horror and to cinema itself. They have both suffered the inevitable lame imitations, poor sequels, and unnecessary prequels, Chainsaw even getting its own second-rate remake. Luckily, though, none of these can tarnish the power of the originals. So there we have it, two movies that changed horror cinema forever. Till next time.